So in Unity, our teachings are based on the life and the teachings of Jesus, and not as one that we don't look to him as being our Savior, but rather as one who so fully embodied the human aspect and the divine aspect of his beingness, one that so knew the greater reality and was able to live so fully from that greater reality that we call truth in Unity, to realize that he was so much more than his human body, and he just wanted us to get it. The teacher was pointing to the truth, and in a lot of religions today we see that they're pointing to the teacher, and he just wanted us to get it, that we are so much more than this human body. And I always love the quote that says, "I'm not all that God is, but all that I am is God." Exactly. So there's no separation at all. And we also know that the story goes that Jesus was born to a virgin, and that his mom actually, in a dream, an angel appeared to her and told her that she was going to be with child, and that this child was going to be, an incredible being. And then we know that Christianity came out of all of this. So I'm going to tell you another story. And there was a king and a queen who lived in 6th century BC. And one day, as the queen was resting in her palace, she had a dream that a white elephant that had a lotus flower at the end of his trunk. And he placed the lotus flower in her, through her side and into her womb. And she woke from the dream. She didn't really know what the dream was about, but later found out that she was pregnant. And later she birthed Siddhartha Gautama. He was born Siddhartha Gautama. And a group of astrologers predicted that he was either going to be a great emperor, or that he was going to turn away from the power and the wealth, and that someday he would be a great spiritual leader. Well, he was ultimately known as Buddha. And Buddhism is what came out of the teachings and the life of Buddha. Interesting how familiar the stories are, isn't it? I know I've shared some of those, how common they are. So I was guided. We have 3 weeks before we get into our small group series, and I'm always just kind of open to what's there. And I picked this book up. I bought this book years ago, and then I was guided to pick this book up again. It's called The Lotus Still Blooms by Reverend Joan Gattuso. Now, Reverend Joan Gattuso is a Unity minister and has been for years. She's been at her Unity church for just under 40 years. And she was first introduced to Buddhism in 1991, and she studied under His Holiness the Dalai Lama, as well as the Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh. And so for me, this book really helps to bring the Eastern and the Western traditions together. And I see the correlations, and I love this, and this is what I want to talk about for these 3 weeks, is the correlations between this beautiful teaching of Buddhism and what we believe here at Unity, because they're so in alignment with each other. Now, one of the words that you will hear in Buddhism is the word noble. And so I looked it up in the dictionary, and noble means an exalted moral character or being, excellence. And so when the word noble is used, that's what it's meaning. And so the question is, well, what is a noble being? Well, a noble being is one who cares as much about others as they care about themselves. That's a noble being, one who cares as much about others, no matter who they are. I should probably put that in there, huh? No matter who they are, as you care about yourself. That's a noble being. So the first thing in the book is the 4 noble truths. Now, here's the thing about this. Okay, so I got this book years ago, and I read the first noble truth, and it was just like, I can't look at that. It was just so against everything that I felt like I was being taught, in Unity. And so that's when I put the book down, and big lessons of just not going further. So don't get up and walk out when you see the first noble truth. Okay? The first noble truth is life is suffering. Good one, Kenneth. Life is suffering. The second noble truth is the cause of suffering is our own grasping and clinging, our attachments to our desires. The third noble truth is cessation of suffering is possible. If I just would have let myself get to the third noble truth, I'd have stayed with the book earlier. The fourth is presentation of the Eightfold Path leads to the end of suffering and promotes well-being. So Reverend Gattuso says that it takes a real willingness to be able to look at that first noble truth in order to find another way and to recognize that this spiritual truth is true in our lives, that life contains suffering. And, look at just even these past days and the floods and people being displaced. You pick up a newspaper or you watch the news, and she really encourages us, look deeply at our own lives and look at the lives of the people around us. And I don't know of anybody who hasn't suffered in their lifetime, and it's not that suffering, and here's the thing, in Buddhism, suffering isn't a noble thing. It's not, it's not about that. But the reality is that life contains suffering. Impermanence is also a big thing that is looked at in the Buddhist teaching. And this is the reality that everything changes. Did you guys know that everything changes? It does. Everything changes. That's amazing, isn't it? And she goes on to say that in magical thinking, we wish that the good and pleasurable things would always stay the same. And I remember so vividly in my early days of Unity, and I was sitting in those back rows when Reverend Douglas Bottorff, who was the minister at the time, and he was talking about that, things change and things fall apart. And I, literally was like, put my fingers in my ears, la, 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 la. I don't want to hear that. Because at that point in time, I thought, I got this spiritual thing down, man. And I'm never going to suffer. I'm never going to have bad things happen because I got this down. All I have to do is keep my focus. And how did that work for me? And how's that working for us? Because life changes. And in those changes, some changes are really great changes, but some changes are really hard. And we do suffer in those changes. I'm going to be the first one to say, I suffered a lot when Sean died. That was a huge change in my life. She goes on to say that the entire subject of impermanence is often just neglected or not looked at by New Thought and by metaphysicians. And again, she says somehow we get caught up in the magical thinking that if I just don't look at any of the unsettling aspects of life, like the fact that we age, that there is sickness, that things do change, that we're going to die someday, if we just don't look at it, it's never going to happen to us. And so here's the difference, you guys, because it is important for us to focus on the good. And at the same time, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about that being real in our journey and recognizing that, I don't know anybody personally who hasn't aged. And I don't know anybody personally who has just lived and never died. And I'm going to tell you something, if there's any one person that I think could have done it, it would have been our Papa Harry Sparks. He's the one that would have done it. And it's just, this is life, and it's the journey, and it's the experiences, and it's okay, and it's okay, and it's okay. And so many times it's our resistance to it, that causes the suffering. It's the resistance to it. So the Buddhist teaching is that our attempt to avoid all aspects of life is what causes our suffering. And that by acknowledging this full spectrum, that's our first step towards alleviating the suffering. The only constant, you guys, is in life is the absolute, is the great reality, is God, Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call that. It's the only constant in life. And to have that mindset that I know that I had, thinking nothing was ever going to change, was really a rude awakening for me when things did change. So let's take a look at the Four Noble Truths. I'm already there. Look at that. I know I'm there. So, but I'm going to expand on them a little bit. Okay, number one, life is suffering. It's not that life causes us to suffer, but rather when we insist the world be what it is not, we cause our suffering. So when I think I need somebody to behave a certain way in order for me to be okay, and they don't behave that way, I suffer. When I get so attached to an outcome and it doesn't turn out that way, I suffer. So that's the cause of our suffering. When we recognize rather than deny the fact of impermanence is the tide of suffering, then we've taken the first step. So that's a good thing. This number two, the cause of our suffering is our grasping and clinging, our attachments to our desires. And this is absolutely quite logical for us, that we experience suffering because of these things. Has anybody here ever clung to a relationship that you knew was over? And you got your fingernails in it and you're just not going to let it go. And what happens in that? It creates suffering for us. Anything that we cling to or grasp, the unmet expectations, our addictions, create suffering. Number three, the cessation of suffering is possible. Yay! There's always a way out, since suffering is not our eternal fate. That's not what this is about at all. It's not our eternal fate. And if we're willing to really look deeply at the true nature of life, then we will find that our suffering lessens and lessens. And then number four, presentation of the eightfold path that leads to the end of suffering and promotes well-being is something for us to look at. And what she says is we can achieve happiness through engaging fully in the noble eightfold path. And this is actually one of the most important of the Buddhist teachings. The eightfold path. Here we find the cure or the spiritual medicine to our suffering. And I want to share with you that not only am I reading her book, but I had about a 6-hour journey the other day, and I love to listen to my spiritual stuff. So I had Buddhist monk Pema Chodron, and I listened to her on the way up and on the way back. I got online and I listened. I specifically pulled up the eightfold path and I listened to various monks talk about this. Now, interestingly enough, as it is in life, they had different interpretations of the various aspects of the eightfold path. And I think that's so right and perfect, because that's life for us, that all of us have different interpretations. And one of the things that I love about unity is that when I'm up here and I'm sharing something, I'm not saying you guys have to believe this. This is the truth and that's it. I'm saying, hey, this is what has been revealed to me or to somebody else, but it's up to you to take that, to interpret it. And here's the thing is that, when we're younger, we're going to interpret things one way. As we mature, we're going to start interpreting them differently. And as we move into our more mature years, we interpret things even differently there. So, just having an open mind. But this stuff is so good. And already, just in this week of working with it, I've used it a couple times, and it has made such a difference for me. So the eightfold path: right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Today we're going to talk about two of these, of the eightfold path. Right view. His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, if an individual has a calm state of mind, that person's attitudes and views will be calm and tranquil, even in the presence of agitation. Now, what happens if we have an agitated mind and we find ourselves in an agitated experience? Is it good? No, we're very closed. We're thinking about what we're going to say, our part. But when we have a calm state of mind and something occurs, somebody comes up and they're not necessarily in their most centered space, the opportunity that we have in those moments is vastly different, because we have this openness and we can see a bigger picture. We're open to seeing something more and to asking questions to bring more out. And in that experience, we create a connection. In the experience where we're agitated, in an agitated experience, we create disconnect. So I choose B. I choose want to make a connection. So in metaphysics, in the metaphysical realm, we would call right view spiritual understanding. You know, we have 12 powers, and understanding is one of those 12 powers. Now, how many of us believe that we evaluate life through our perceptions? Hopefully every person knows that to be true, because we do. we all have our structures of knowing. We have our filters of what, how life is, whatever's happening, it's coming through our perception. And what they say is when we're constantly in that state and we're not aware of it, that in and of itself just creates a state of confusion for us. But when we incorporate right view and spiritual understanding, then we begin to see life not just according to our perceptions, but we begin to see things and people and situations and circumstances from a broader view, which is going to make all the difference in the world when we can start seeing things from a broader view. The Zen Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh speaks often. He speaks about watering seeds, and a lot of times we're watering seeds of poor me, of not enough, of being a victim, of anger and resentment. But the seeds of right view, the seeds that we want to water, are the seeds of love and compassion and kindness and loving action and forgiveness. And when we water those seeds, everything changes. Everything changes. When we're focusing on those qualities, that's right view, from that perspective. Now, right view is also one of our powers: wisdom, judgment, discernment. There's a scripture that says, do not judge by appearances. That's unrighteous judgment when we judge by appearances. And I'm going to tell you, all of our judgments are unrighteous judgments, because we may think that we have all the information, but even if you have birthed a child and you have raised them, I'm going to tell you, you still don't have all the information. And so all of our judgments are actually unrighteous judgments when it comes to how, that type of judgment. It's all perception. Have you ever had the experience where you thought you knew, and you were really judging somebody, and you were even gossiping about him, maybe gossiping, and you were making them wrong, and then one day, all of a sudden, you get more information, and you discovered that what you thought had, there was more to the picture, you had a different understanding, and in that experience, you're probably pretty humbled. I'm going to tell you, I've had that experience many times in my life. And the beautiful thing about this, you guys, is this is a journey. This is not a destination. And we're all on this journey. And it's okay. And we're not always going to be in that centered space. And we're going to judge unrighteously. And we're going to get angry. And we're going to say things that we wish we didn't say. And it's okay. The thing is that we want to wake up to it. I know that every time that has happened to me, it's made me step back and say to myself, you've got to remember this. You've got to remember this. One that comes to mind is before I had children. And, before you have children, you're all like, my children would never act that way. I would never let my child get away with that. I cannot believe those parents. And then you have children and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. So it's that kind of thing where, just being open, right view helps us to be open. And this is the beginning of the path. This is the beginning. And then we have right thought. And of course, thinking is a big thing that we talk about in Unity. And I love this, that right thought is the speech of the mind. The speech of the mind. And aren't you so glad that it's not always verbal? Yeah. Thank goodness it's not always verbal. But when our thinking is aligned with right view, then we're able to think from higher ideals. When it's aligned with, and that's why right view is is first. There's a term in Course in Miracles called upside down thinking. And many times we're in upside down thinking, but we don't even know that we're in upside down thinking. There was a point at which people believed that the world was flat. That was upside down thinking, the fact that they thought it did not make it so. So sometimes we don't even know that we're in upside down thinking. So here's a couple of things that we can look at to prevent upside down thinking. Number one, associate with like-minded people. We have this wonderful community of like-minded people. We have opportunities to gather together on different occasions. We have opportunities to create connection, to create relationships. I don't know what I would do without my connections when I'm in upside down thinking. And we know we are, and that desire is to say, I can't get this figured out, but can you help me? So like-minded people. Number two is faithfully keep a daily spiritual practice. We talk about this a lot. When we have that daily spiritual practice, we're more likely to keep our mind focused on what is real and what is true. And number three is have an affirmation or a mantra. Something as easy as more is being revealed to me now. More is being revealed. Just something that you can go to. I love the scripture, and this is from The Voice, which is a new Bible, in Philippians, where it says, finally, brothers and sisters, fill your mind with beauty and truth. Meditate on whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is good, whatever is virtuous and praiseworthy. And imagine if we did this even just 3 times a day, just took 5 minutes, what a difference that would be in our life experience. And then there are 3 practices in Buddhism that instruct right thought that are very helpful to create a calming mind. And they are you sure? What am I doing? And is it helpful? So are you sure? Are you sure your thinking is right about a person or a situation? Are you sure, or is it just a story you're telling yourself? What am I doing? So when you're anxious, what am I doing? When I feel anger rising, what am I doing? When I'm speaking unkindly to another person, what am I doing? When I'm holding unrighteous judgment, what am I doing? Ask yourself that question. And then, is this helpful? So is this gossiping helpful? Is this attitude helpful? Is this prejudice helpful? Is this fear helpful? Is this anger helpful? Is this guilt helpful? Is this long-held belief helpful? Is it helpful? And I love Byron Katie's works. Are you guys familiar with Byron Katie? And just very succinctly, essentially it's, are my thoughts right? Do I know that they're right? So she asks these questions, and it's like, whatever it is that you're in the midst of, is it true? And I'm going to tell you, most of the time, my initial answer is, yeah, it's true. But then she gets you with the second question, and she says, are you absolutely sure it's true? And it's like, man, everything's coming up to justify why, yes, I know it's true. But I'm going to tell you, almost every single time, I say, no, I'm not absolutely sure it's true. And then her very last question is, well, what would you be without that thought? What would you be without the thought that somebody has just taken advantage of you? What would you be without the thought? Whatever it is, what would you be without that thought? And you know what you would be? You would be calm. You would be at peace. You would be happy. And I want to remind us all again, because I'm telling you, when I remind us, I'm reminding me that we were created to have dominion over our thoughts. It's like, hello, I get to choose. I get to choose what I'm thinking, where I'm focused. I get to choose a new thought and put that new thought in there. And these are powerful things that we can do. This is our lifelong journey to learn how really the essence of a spiritual practice is to be a better person, to be the best version of who we have come here to be. We wouldn't be here if that wasn't important to us. And so we just get to keep choosing again and again and again without making ourselves bad, without making ourselves wrong, without guilt, but just saying, yep, it's okay. Oh, look at that. Oh, that was interesting. Wonder what I could do differently. Wonder what that was bringing up in me. I wonder, because I think I would have to believe that all of us really want to walk in kindness and compassion and connection in oneness, in love. Yeah, yeah. And so we have the opportunity to do that more and more. So your practice for this week, if you choose to do it, is first of all, wake up, and ask yourself the question, what is my perception here? Do I have the whole picture here? Do I know that this is absolutely true? You know, and that in that moment, it creates more space for more real information to be presented just in that moment. And then, you know, work with these other things of asking, you know, am I sure? And what am I doing? And is it helpful? You know, is this thought or is this feeling helpful? That's all your homework is for the week. We're going to be talking about right speech, right action, and right livelihood next week, and then we'll finish up the following week. I want to do another plug for our spirit groups. So I love how the universe works because we're all about authenticity. And I've been really on this path of just wanting us to embrace our totality, embrace that which we want to not look at, embrace, you know, where we feel like we're not doing it good enough, or, you know, just embrace the wholeness. This journey is about that, and so is our next journey with our spirit groups. It's called Dark Matters by Lori Boyd, and it's really about all of us being able to say, this is who I am, and I'm okay just as I am. I'm enough just as I am, even when I falter in my life, even when I get off track and I've flipped somebody off going down the road. I know I use that. I seriously don't do that, but if I ever did it, I seriously don't. But if I ever did, I was just trying to think of something. Let me think of something that's real to me. Even when I judge somebody unrighteously, that I'm still okay. So, okay. So you have a beautiful week, you guys, and you know, I behold that beautiful light that is in each and every one of us and each and every one of you. So namaste, namaste.